Well, let's do it. Gary, hit the music.
Live from San Francisco and here on Clubhouse, it's the Good Time Show, bringing you today in technology. And now your hosts, Arti and Sriram.
Woohoo!
All right.
Yeah. Hey, folks. Welcome to tonight's episode of Good Time. I'm Arti, and Shriram and I co-host this show, and we've been doing this for the last couple of months. I think we should stop saying last month. It's been a couple months since December, and we've been having so much fun doing this. It's about an hour. We try and do this pretty much every weeknight, and we learn so much, and we get guests, just spectacular guests who are like really kind and generous with their time to come in and talk about all things tech, culture, movies, TV shows, just stuff that's like happening, and all the positive stories in tech and products. This today we are doing it's a little past 6 p.m. Where we are in San Francisco. We wanted to do an East Coast friendly show thanks to our guest tonight. So thanks so much for changing around your schedule. I think we got people from somewhere in Europe, in New Zealand, just people waking up at like really odd hours. Thanks for making it all happen and just being here. We really, really appreciate it. Sriram and I, we have a 2-year-old kid, so we try and work around the schedule. This is kind of something we do as a hobby. But welcome, everyone. If you're first time you're coming to the show, welcome to Good Time. Sriram?
Awesome. Thanks so much, Arti. Okay, we have some really amazing guests today, so let me kind of get them all. First up, we have Gary Tan. Music, responsible for all music on the show, and VC at Initialized Capital, and also YouTube content creator. So go check him out. Smash all the buttons on his YouTube channel. We also have coming back two of my favorite people on YouTube, in Colin and Samir. I would say, I met them a few months ago, and they've been so inspiring to me in how warm and generous they are, both in personally, but also with their content, just helping people think about the creator economy. So if you haven't checked them out, go check out their YouTube content, their podcast. They're some of the two of the smartest, nicest people that you'll see online. So Colin, Samir, thank you so much for coming back on the show.
Man, thank you. Your introductions are always so great. I know my dad's listening, and he loves your introductions. So thank you, Sriram. Yeah.
Well, if your dad is listening, just be sure that your son has achieved more than any other Asian kid would ever have. So you should be proud. I can keep going, but I want to embarrass somebody anymore. Okay, we also have coming back somebody really special, the founder and CEO of a little-known company called Coinbase, Brian Armstrong. Brian, thank you so much for coming back.
Thank you for having me. I got it. There we go.
And last but definitely not least, this is someone that I've looked up to for many, many years. And we are very, very lucky to have with us today Marques Brownlee, but as everybody probably knows him, MKBHD. I can give you some stats. He has over 13.6 million subscribers on YouTube, over 700 million views last year. He has been uploading videos. I went to his first ever video since about 2009, which involved, I think, like a 17-inch HP Pavilion laptop. He has interviewed actually a couple of folks we have had on the show, in Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg and a bunch of others, made Forbes 30 under 30. But I don't think any of that captures the impact Marques has. I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that he's by far one of the most influential, thoughtful technology commentators and reviewers that you'll ever find. I watch all of his videos, and he's just an amazing, amazing content creator and technology spokesperson. So, Marques, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Wow, you were right about the intros. That was incredible. Thank you for having me on. Long-time listener, first-time caller. Looking forward to it. I really enjoy a lot of the conversations I've heard in the show so far, so looking forward to it.
Awesome. So we have a lot to cover with Marques, and we also going to have Brian on in the second part of the show. We're going to talk about have Marques and Brian talk crypto as well. But first off, Marques, I think a lot of people here know you, but some people are really new to you. And I think your story of how you got into YouTube, I refer to you having uploaded videos for a very, very long time. Could you just talk about how you got into YouTube content creation as a teenager and just your journey so far?
Yeah, sure. I'll give like a abbreviated version. So I started in 2009 in high school, and high school kid looking for a laptop to spend his allowance money on. So I wanted to do all the research I possibly could because there's no way I spent all this money and don't get the best thing. So I watched a ton of YouTube videos, basically, all these reviews, all these laptops that were out at the time. Finally got one and ended up buying it. And when I got it, I noticed some things about it that I actually didn't see in the videos I'd watching. I thought I knew everything. So that point was like I sort of felt natural to turn the camera on myself and make a video showing some of those things that I'd found. So if someone else is watching a bunch of videos trying to pick a laptop, they would have even more information that I didn't have. They could make a better choice. So that was the first video. That's how it started, basically, with the tech stuff, and it's been pretty much snowballing ever since.
By the way, I would say that massively undersells the amount of work that you have done over there, Marques. So one thing I want to get to is, like, could you just walk us through, because I think we all see the finished product that you have out there. Could you just walk us through just your process? Like when you get like a new gadget, for example, I just saw your, AirPods Max, which we just got. I've seen a test service. Could you just walk us through your process about putting together one of those videos and what that looks like behind the scenes?
Yeah, okay. So the videos obviously started off super simple, just like turning on the laptop, recording with the webcam, hitting stop, and then I'd upload that file. Like that was it. So today the videos are very different. They're much more well produced and well made, just in an effort to make them more enjoyable to watch. So it's a whole production, basically. I think calling a YouTuber a video producer would probably be pretty accurate. So for a review, for something like a smartphone review, which is probably the bread and butter of the channel, that is a whole process. First of all, pre-production, which is we get the device, we review it. I look through it, find out all the things I like about it, all the things I don't like about it, put it all together. But then it sort of turns into this production process where my team and I sort of try to capture on video all of the things that I noticed, all of the things that I want to include in the review. It's sort of standard. I have a script that I share with everyone so we all know what to get video of. And that's probably the most fun part of the process because we like to have fun with it. We get carried away with like really extra shots, robot shots, all sort of fun stuff like that. But at the end of the day, we try to cover the whole thing, and then I just go back and edit it all and turn it into something that I hope people would want to watch. That's actually at this point maybe the most efficient part of the process.
Now, I did a bunch of prep for this, conversation, and I was going through some of your interviews and videos, and something you said in your recent Verge interview stuck with me, which is I think you were kind of surprised by how many people are actually interested in technology. And I guess this may be a kind of like a simple question, which may have a complex answer. Why do you think your content resonates so broadly? Because in some ways, I feel like you've also been taken by surprise by how many people just kind of it just resonates with, and just watching you review these gadgets. So what do you think about your content and what you do, just pulls in so many fans?
Yeah, when I started, tech videos wasn't that big of a genre on YouTube. So I guess part of it comes from just the fact that there's more people watching videos online, and obviously some subset of them are interested in tech, so that's awesome. But yeah, it's wild that like, a smartphone comes out, maybe a pretty niche product gets released, I'll make a video talking about what it is, and by the end of the day 3 million people have watched it. It doesn't make sense based on what I started with, which was the early days of YouTube in 2009. So it does always kind of surprise me, but I think the fact that we have so much fun with it and that we're making stuff we want to watch just means there's other people out there with kind of the same taste. So that's pretty sweet.
I wanted to ask about sort of the level of quality that you've really brought to the videos over the years. And now you have a motion graphics artist, you have a cinematographer, and I've heard you say that that your team might end up spending something like even 8 hours of sort of creative work on something as little as even like the first 7 seconds of intros and things like that. And I just wanted to like ask about, has that evolved? Is it still sort of that level of detail and focus? And I think hats off, because it really does come out in the videos that there is that sort of craftsmanship.
Yeah, definitely. So this is one of the things that's been really interesting about the tech YouTube world for the past couple of years, is like the production value of everything I've seen has skyrocketed. So if you tried to upload like the first few videos that I uploaded back in the day, they wouldn't get nearly the same response because the bar for like how good everyone has gotten with video has gone up so much. We've been a big part of that, and I'm really proud of that. But I think the cherry on top is we try to do things that are sort of next level, like really hard to replicate, things that take a lot of time, but things that are like worth it in the end when you see the final result. And so that might be spending like 7 hours on like a robot shot with some motion graphics and just a crazy intro that like really captivates the whole point of the video. It's totally unnecessary, but as a video nerd, it's like, because we have the resources and because it's that fun and fun to watch, we find it's actually worth it.
Oh, we notice. We know. I mean, especially the camera nerds, on here.
Yeah.
we notice. It's really appreciated.
Yeah, Gary and I were just chatting about it on like, how you were the ones who like, I think Marques, you pioneered like using some really high-end cameras, like red cameras and stuff like that, which is like, it's not a thing. It's not what like normal like YouTube, reviewers actually started using. You kind of started that whole thing. And I guess one thing I wanted to ask you is like, back when you started investing in some really high-end gear, like camera gear, did you know at that point like there was going to be payoff? And now in retrospect, do you feel like there is that payoff of like having really high-end gear? Because I'm sure at that time it was a huge investment. It's not easy to make that decision. How do you feel about that in retrospect?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. So I got asked in another sort of interview setting, like, how do you think about the cost that you spend on a video versus how much you make outputting videos? And the fact is, I don't really think in individual projects that way, where like if we buy a camera, then I have to like make a certain number of videos to make it worth it. The camera stuff is like, it's a little more intangible at a high level, because like, okay, you guys are, you're very perceptive and you pick up on the difference between like 17 stops of dynamic range from a red camera and 13, but like you can make a tech video amazing with way less equipment. I think at the very highest level that we try to output, it's more of just like the final 1% that when you do notice, you do really appreciate. That's like, it's hard to put into like a dollar value of like, we spent this much on the camera and it will be worth it after X videos. We just never really thought about it that way. It's more of just like the intangibles, which maybe that's a bad answer for the business people, but
no, that's great.
That's
I mean,
you
think about it that way, because not a lot of people do. I think a lot of people look at it as like, it's like a transactional value thing, and not to be cynical about it, but I think, a lot of people look at it as ROI and like tactical ROI. And it's amazing that you don't see it that way.
Marques, something I'd love to touch on is something you and I spoke about earlier today, which is, your journey has been so long on YouTube, and your rise has been really steady, but really significant. And like in the beginning, you're creating at a time when there aren't even that many other options for video on the internet. So you're uploading tons of videos, taking tons of shots on YouTube. But now you're at a point where your YouTube videos are very specific and they're reaching millions. Do you feel like there is more weight every time you press publish? Like the publish button is a little bit heavier now, knowing your responsibility and just your reach.
Yeah, and I think that comes from the response that we kind of get to videos, where like originally the response to a pretty classic like tutorial on that HP laptop was like, oh neat, I learned about some software. But the response sometimes to a bigger video, let's say it's a review, or maybe it's even something that's like it has a lot of negative points in a review. A lot of times you're already anticipating what the response will be before you even publish it. So there'll be a review where you already know there's like a bunch of bad things about this product, and hopefully there's, hopefully I didn't miss anything. Hopefully the stuff I'm noticing isn't a bug and everyone else's is fine. Like you start to think more about that sort of stuff and making sure you get it right. But I think that's an appropriate pressure. I think with great power comes great responsibility. So it makes sense.
And I think, Marques, on that same note, again, something that we kind of touched on a bit earlier today was with that pressure and that responsibility, one thing that you've done really successfully is actually bring the YouTube creator ecosystem into the mainstream limelight by bringing more mainstream celebrities onto YouTube, specifically onto your channel. Obviously, I think, interviewing Kobe Bryant is such a big moment, not only for you, but for the YouTube creator ecosystem. Elon Musk, President Obama. Just curious how you look at some of these interviews, and specifically maybe the story about interviewing Kobe Bryant and what that was like.
Yeah, well, I mean, first of all, I love that. I feel like the rising tide lifts all ships. I feel like that's been true for a long time. So people open doors for me, and I'm happy to hopefully continue to rise the tide and open doors for others. The Kobe interview story is so funny because like that's literally as a child, the second interview I ever did on camera. The first one was a virtual interview. So that's like the most nervous I've ever been in my life, which is like Nike reaches out to a 16-year-old and says, "Hey, you know this guy Kobe Bryant? He was doing this farewell tour right now. You might have heard of him. He's dropping a new shoe. He had a big hand in making it. There's all sorts of tech in the shoe. He wants to talk about it. Do you want to talk to him about it and make a video?" Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
amazing.
So I'm not necessarily thinking in the moment like, okay, this is going to be great for YouTube and people are going to have way more doors open for them in the future. But when we hit publish and we see that we did a good job with it, I think that is a pretty sweet byproduct. Is there's going to be more of that stuff happening.
So one of the things I think about you is, I think of people like Walt Mossberg or previous, folks who've been like really legend in the tech reviewing scene. So over the years, I would say, you went from like somebody on YouTube to now probably one of the most influential voices when it comes to reviewing technology products. And my career and Artie's career has often been the other side. We've often been the people making products, if not hardware, definitely software. How do you think of the evolution of your relationship with these companies? Do they ask you for feedback? Are they a frenemy? Do you give them input? Are they afraid of you? How do you see that evolution in your relationship with, Apple or Tesla or anybody else for that matter?
Yeah, it's funny. I think it's a healthy respect. Now, the thing about if you're in YouTube for long enough in like the product review scene, I'm sure if you ask like a makeup YouTuber or any sort of product reviewer, they'd find the same thing. There is always some level of marketing happening, no matter who you speak to or when you speak to them, when it comes to a product. So everyone's trying to be honest about a new product when it comes out, and I love that. But we obviously have a tendency to be brutally honest. That's the whole point of the channel. So if they're looking me in the eyes and trying to spin a negative as a positive, it's kind of like we're looking at each other. And I know you're saying that you think it's the best option, but I think we both know that there's things you could have done better here. Something that comes to mind, I'm giving a super specific example, but when I asked about Samsung's new $1,000 Note 10 or Note 20 and why it was made of plastic, and they called it Glastic because it kind of seems like glass. Like I'm looking at the guy and he's telling me this, and I think you kind of see like a look in his eye where he's like, yeah, I know I'm telling you this, and I already know that you know that this is kind of dumb, but I think that relationship is like very common in the tech world where you're trying to see through the fog all the time, and obviously it's their job to promote the product as best as they can, but it's my job to share the real experience with people. So that's what I try to do.
That's great. I mean, I think at some point you called yourself a professional user, and that it just makes a lot of sense because oftentimes, like you said, I build products, and until recently was like tech companies just building products, and this is kind of our life, right? Like we get so caught up in the details of like how we build stuff in teams and everything that we don't look at it all, pretty much like how you see it, which is like totally fresh pair of eyes as like an external user. So that's really interesting. I think one question I wanted to ask you, this is like slightly separate. What I love your videos on retro tech. And especially, I'm sure like one of the most watched ones is the Game Boy one. I'm sure you get asked about that all the time. I would love to understand the inspiration behind it. Like, it's just such a cool idea. It's really fun. The Game Boy one particularly, I find it really funny because, you start out with like, this thing came out in like 1989 and I wouldn't really know about it. I wasn't a user, and we were like, yeah, no shit, like we get that. And you kind of like go from there into like getting Casey and just going like having a lot of fun with it. So talk to us about like the inspiration behind retro tech, that set of videos in general, and also like if you can go into specifics of any of these or like the Game Boy one specifically, on like behind the scenes there, or how you made it happen.
Yeah, RetroTech's a good one. It was a lot of good things coming together in the same place. I happen to be 27, so I'm like right in this age where there's a bunch of pretty iconic pieces of tech that I barely missed. Like I never owned a GameCube, but
by
a
the
lot
way,
of
just
people...
thank you for making us all feel really ancient right there, Marcus. Just thank you so much for that.
But like it mattered a lot because there's a lot of people in different ages in my audience too, where they are way more familiar with these pieces of tech. So I'm always talking about this new stuff, new, all the newest pieces of tech. And the thought came up of like, there's like a whole list of things that I could sort of review now and review their impact on tech as we have it today, and sort of rediscover that stuff. So yeah, we had a bunch of YouTubers appear on the show, and it was a lot of fun. And I got to sort of rediscover that nostalgic bit of tech. And I think people who are older who did use that tech found it in a totally different light, where it was like, oh, I played with this. I knew it like the back of my hand. So is a different lens to view it through. But I think both versions of watching that show would be really fun.
Yeah, I love that you tried to open the whole box and you were like, how do I do that? And there was like a small like push or something written there, and you were like, man, okay, I feel like they've really improved the packaging technology since then, like 30 years ago to now. I just thought
Boxes have gotten a lot better since the late 80s.
Yep.
So you Marques, like on this topic of you being like a professional user and someone who's like very into tech, obviously plays out in the videos, and it's why you've built such a big community. But another thing that you are is a professional YouTube creator. And that's not something that was actually, available when you first started uploading videos. So just to shift focus into that direction, you're pretty transparent with how the business of YouTube works, especially your business, between AdSense, brand deals, merchandise, some of the different diverse revenue streams that you have. But what do you think goes into being a professional YouTube creator? Like what are the components that make up a professional YouTube creator? I'm sure there's a lot of people in the audience who are interested in becoming that. So just curious. You mentioned you have this great analogy about an octopus, so I'll just leave it there.
Yeah. Okay. So there's a bunch of, first of all, it's always funny when you ask like a kid in maybe, I don't know, 6th grade or something today, like, what do you want to do when you grow up? And so many of them say YouTuber today, that literally didn't exist 10 years ago, which is hilarious. So if you want to be a YouTuber, so let's say you're in 6th grade or whatever grade and you want to be a YouTuber, you end up having maybe like 6 or 7 different individual jobs that you have to train yourself in and become good at the same time. So I describe myself as an octopus. Like you have these 8 arms doing 8 different things. One of those arms is writing video ideas. One of those arms is being a camera operator. One of those arms is being a professional video editor. One of those arms is being a content strategist and figuring out how to use social media in different ways to grow your brand. One of them is literally just in charge of the inbox. One of them is a financial accountant who talks to the tax man. Like there's a lot going on when you're a professional YouTuber. It's a small title that includes a bunch of different stuff. I could go way more into the octopus thing, but depends on how much time we have.
We have a bunch of time actually, but actually one of the things which kind of related to that. By the way, Marcus, I love your joke in one of your interviews about this is probably the most common question you get around the holiday dinner table, any dinner table, which is like how do I make money on YouTube? Do you remember, like, was there a video or was there a moment where you were like, okay, you know what, this is going to be my thing, this is going to be my career? Because in some ways I feel like a lot of people like maybe don't realize how long you've been doing this, and this is like not an overnight success. So like, did you ever have a moment where you're like, okay, you know what, this is going to be what I'm going to do, and nothing else?
Yeah. Okay. So I wish I could point to like one moment where I went, oh, I uploaded this video and then I knew. But it's not really as romantic as that. I think really, if you picture a gradient of like, I don't know, just imagine a band that's blue on one side and red on the other side. And it's just a sort of a clean gradient from blue to red. At some point in there, it's not blue anymore and it's red, but it's kind of unclear where that point is. And that's kind of how it feels going from doing it as a hobby to doing it as a job. I think the obvious answer is when I graduated from college, then like I I needed a job, and it was just where I would pour all my time and reinvest. But I think, yeah, at some point during college, it was like when a professor asks you why you haven't dropped out yet, and then why classmates are like wondering why all of your projects have something to do with YouTube, but you never tell anyone about it. It just sort of happens slowly. So that's how I look at it.
Marques, I have questions. I mentioned that my dad is in the audience, and my dad is someone I've tried to explain the business of YouTube to a few times, and I'm not very successful at it. So I was curious if there are people listening who don't fully 100% understand how the business of YouTube works. How do you explain it?
Hold on, before you answer that, Marques, Samir's dad, just know that Samir has been inspiring millions of us, and he's been such a huge impact on my channel. And you should be really proud of him. And he just really made it in a way that none of us.
I appreciate that. Thank you,
Marques. You can go on.
Yeah.
So good. Okay, so yeah, YouTube it's a platform. I don't know if I could I'm just going to give you like the fundamentals of it, but basically when YouTube sells ads, they split it with the people who uploaded the content. Like, it's that simple. The more eyeballs and the more specific eyeballs you bring to YouTube, the more revenue you generate for YouTube, and therefore the more they split it with you. And there's a trillion other nuances to that are, CPM related and content related and audience funnel related and all that fun stuff. But at the end of the day, YouTube wants people on their platform.
And even outside of, the advertising, obviously, that comes through YouTube, which is very unique to being a YouTube creator. You mentioned this in a couple other interviews, you're also fielding brand deals that are straight into your inbox. Can you talk a bit about how you think about working with brands and operating your business as a creator? Because obviously one of those octopus arms for you is not just creating the videos, but actually selling brand integrations.
100%. So at a pretty core level, like, brands are reaching out to creators because they can more specifically target, an audience of a certain topic. And so every time I get, I do manage my inbox, and I'm in charge of the brand deals that I take. And most of that is about finding good partners to work with who really are like actually willing to embrace working with a creator, which to me means letting a creator be creative and actually, deliver a message as best they can to the audience that they know better than anyone else. But the other half of that job is saying no to almost everything, saying no to 99% of the things I'm offered, because either they're not a great fit or they're not the best partner to work with. It's kind of a balancing act. You juggle a lot of things there, but I think at the end of the day, I'm still trying to make things that people want to watch. So always good to keep that in the back of the head.
By the way, we really appreciate you not saying no to us and doing this, if nothing else, so that we can, convince Samir's dad that Samir is a huge success.
That's what I'm here for.
Yeah,
that's what we're all here for.
Yeah.
Okay, it's 30 minutes past the hour. Let me kind of quickly reset, and then I have like a rapid fire segment for Marques. So for everyone tuning in, this has been huge. Thank you for all the tweets and DMs. I've been seeing the notifications fly by. This is the Good Time show that Arti and I do every single night. We're doing it slightly earlier today because we have very special guests. We are joined today by Colin and Samir, two amazing YouTubers, and especially Samir. Samir is really awesome. Samir's dad. We have Brian Armstrong, the founder and CEO of Coinbase, that we're going to spend a lot more time just after this. And then we have the one and only Marques Brownlee, aka MKBHD, probably one of the most interesting YouTube creators and tech commentators around. Okay, Marques. Okay, we're going to do a fun little rapid fire segment. I'm going to ask you a few questions, just off the top of your head, 20, 30 seconds, come up with it. I'll warn you, these are not easy. Some people accuse me of going easy on people on the show, so we don't want to be easy on you. Are you ready?
Oh boy. All right, go for it.
All right, here we go. All right, your thoughts on Tesla and electric cars?
Love the product.
All right, love it. Virtual reality and VR over the next few years.
Really fun tech, developing fast, but needs a killer app, because most people know what it is but don't know why they want it.
Okay. Xbox versus PlayStation.
I'm a PlayStation person. I think it's beautifully ugly, and that's what makes it great.
Okay, here's a really easy one. iPhone versus Android.
Oh, well, there's no or. I carry both. except if you're on Clubhouse, then it's you got to have an iPhone, right?
Yeah. Oh, Marcus, that is a great diplomatic answer. I really appreciate this. Okay, one last one. Thoughts on the Apple M1 and kind of this is the future of the M1 architecture and Apple moving to ARM.
Oh, I love the beautifully nerdy question. Super excited about them. Really specifically excited about when they make an Apple Silicon Mac Pro. I know they're working their way up to it because they've got the lowest end Macs right now. But the lowest end Macs with M1 chips are so good that there's almost no way the high end stuff isn't incredible. I hope they don't like somehow ruin that. It seems like they're on a great path.
They are. I mean, we had a previous show with like where we really got deep and then we really nerded on the technology of it. One last one, camera technology. And we know spoke about Red. You're really in the cutting edge. Camera technology you're excited about.
Computational photography in larger sensors.
Okay. Wow. Okay. I just love it. I think we could probably spend an episode on each one of this. Okay. Well, Brian, I know you have one question about tech companies and content for Marcus. You want to go?
Yeah, sure. So probably a lot of people in the audience, they work in tech or at tech startups. Maybe they've even started a company. But what do you think most companies should be doing on YouTube? You know, like we put talks up of speakers who come in to Coinbase and things, but we don't get the views that you do, and I don't feel like we're doing it right. You know, who should host it? What kind of content would be compelling? Like what tech companies or startups have really made YouTube work for them? Do you think?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. I think when I notice a company like succeeding well on YouTube, it's usually because they have a good personality attached to it. Some of them have multiple personalities and that can succeed, but I found like when there's like one or two that are really good and that can drive a viewer back that they kind of get calibrated to, that works really well. Now, obviously, if you're a company doing videos on YouTube, you're trying to highlight how good your product is and you're trying to deliver marketing messages and all that fun stuff. But I think just having a personality kind of like a human instead of just like a robot marketing machine, I think that appeals to at least having people tolerate something that they know is a marketing message.
Okay, Marcus, I have one question because this come up a lot. Great question, Brian. That's actually a fantastic topic. We should probably dive into that. Marcus, launching your own products. Are we going to see it? I know you had like a backpack collab. I saw you had like other stuff coming out there. Will you ever see an MKBHD phone?
I can't say too much, but I think it makes sense, doesn't it? It makes sense. You know, the thing I get asked so often is like, oh wow, you review a lot of these things. Why don't you make your own? And like, I'm a creator. I make videos. I run a video studio. I can't like build a factory in my studio and make products. So it always has to involve some sort of collaboration. So the challenge for me is finding the best version of that collaboration to make something where I can actually have an impact. So we'll see how it goes.
Okay, well, that does not intrigue me one bit at all. Okay, all right. Switching gears just a little bit. Marcus, that was amazing. One of the things we wanted to do on this show is try and bring together people that you may not have heard together before. And on this, we're kind of really excited to have, like you've seen, Marcus, but also Brian Armstrong, the founder and CEO of Coinbase, who was kind of gracious enough to come back and join us. First of all, I want to say something for everyone listening. None of this is financial advice. I was reminded because I saw also Marcus' latest video on Dogecoin. I have to say this. This is not financial advice. Please don't take any financial advice from any of us on a Clubhouse show. Just kind of want to put that out there and make all the lawyers happy. I want to actually start off with Marcus first and go to Brian. Marcus, I saw a video on Dogecoin. Just curious about your interest in crypto overall, and then your Brian here. What if anything or about crypto that you would want to actually ask him about.
Yeah, I mean, crypto is obviously fascinating and has been sort of like lingering at top of mind for a while lately. And I made the video about Dogecoin just because it has such a cultural moment right now, and it was really interesting to me. But I'm curious if maybe I'll ask Brian, like, is there like some giant, do you see like a 20, 30 year future in crypto? Because when I do, I feel like it's sort of like this universal currency potential that it could have, but we're not sure if it. I'm curious how you look at it.
Yeah, well, first of all, your Dogecoin video I thought was great. I love you captured the essence of it, which is that it's not trying to be super serious or cool, and it's just kind of fun. And so, frankly, I underestimated Dogecoin when it first came out. I was like, okay, that's a funny joke, but no one's going to treat it seriously. And it turned out to be a bigger deal. So you caught on to that really quick. Yeah, so I mean, where could crypto go? Look, I definitely see it being a 20, 30, 100-year thing. I think right now people are primarily jumping into crypto because they want to invest a little bit of it. They maybe want to see the value of it go up. Even now, institutions like businesses, big companies are starting to hold it on their balance sheet as like an inflation hedge. They're all worried about there's so many dollars being printed and stimulus and quantitative easing and all these kinds of topics. So that's a new trend. And then central banks are starting to create digital currencies. China, the US, a bunch of countries are looking into it. There's these new kinds of applications coming out like DeFi and NFTs. Where I think this is going is that we're seeing the creation of a new economy, which we call the crypto economy internally. And it's basically a complement to the traditional economy, but it's more fair, it's more free, it's more global. It's kind of access to it is democratized by anybody around the world as long as they have a smartphone. And I think people are going to be like earning a living in the crypto economy. They're going to be borrowing and lending, investing, obviously, and using these new kinds of apps. Like there might even be social media apps that get built in these new decentralized systems that are kind of like re-decentralizing the web. So I think it's, this is kind of maybe a lofty statement, but I think it's the future of the economy. I think it's the future of the web, re-decentralizing it. Crypto has a long way to go, and I think the crypto economy could be a sizable portion of GDP. So it's kind of cool.
Okay, so I was thinking of questions to ask both of you together. Obviously Brian, in his role as just given his role in the crypto community with Coinbase, and Marques is kind of like the person who kind of represents the zeitgeist with consumer tech. For both of you, do you think crypto has broken through to mainstream consumer awareness? And if not, what do you think it needs to really get there? Marques, I'm curious to get your take. And then Brian, or other way around. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny whenever I see new tech, I always feel like I want to have a finger on the pulse of like the real world litmus test. Like, is there real awareness about this product? Because the funny thing is, I upload a video and there's lots of people talking tech, but there are very few pieces of the tech world that bleed over outside of I'll go to practice one day at night and a teammate asks me like, did you see what this new folding phone is doing? And I'm like, wow, that's actually, it's gotten outside the tech world. So I feel like crypto is definitely one of those things that's gotten outside the tech world. There's a lot of people aware of it. I think maybe a more interesting question is like, what is the next step beyond awareness? Is it legitimacy? Is it people feeling safe using it? What is the next thing after awareness?
Yeah, I agree. I think that first thing that's getting people in the door is investing, but to me, that's not the reason why I got into crypto. I'm hoping for there to be more economic freedom in the world and all kinds of things people can do with it. I think the majority of people won't actually come into crypto until there's something they really want to do with it that's not related to investing. Because frankly, like half the world doesn't have disposable income to invest in kind of risky new things. That's not like a really mass market use case. So how do we get 1 billion people? One other analogy I always think about is kind of compare crypto to the internet, right? So when the internet first started, it was super slow, clunky, dial-up modems. Even before the web browser got invented, people had, IP addresses. You had to like use the command line. It was super difficult. And so crypto needs to go through a lot of those same transitions. Just like the internet went from dial-up to broadband, crypto needs to get way more scalable. That's going to drive a lot of usage because today the transaction fees are pretty high. There's also, the internet had to add privacy, like remember HTTPS in the browser, like with that little lock icon, that was not around at the beginning of the internet, and nobody wanted to use it for commerce and put their credit card in and stuff. So privacy had to get invented on the internet. Just the general usability of crypto. Like today, if you send crypto, you're sending it to an address that looks like a random string of characters. That's kind of like an IP address, or it's a machine readable thing, like an IP address or a Bitcoin address. But I want to be able to type in youtube.com and not like a human readable name. And in crypto, we need to get to that same place where you can type, marques.coin, send it to there, not to some random string of characters. So those are the kind of underlying technologies that'll help crypto get to the next stage, I think.
Yeah, by the way, I'm curious in terms of, and Marcus, I'm kind of curious because I loved your Dogecoin video. And also, it reminded me that I have to kind of put up a legal disclaimer when I start this segment. So thank you for, I also kind of love the little cutaway that you do when you do those legal disclaimers. I'm curious in terms of like, on the consumer theme, have you been following stuff like NFT or DeFi? Or I'm kind of curious about like, where do you see in terms of crypto getting useful first?
I haven't, but that is always interesting because, for as much as we pay attention to crypto, most people are looking at it as like, can we get invested and can we make money from getting into crypto? I think the next step for me would be like, okay, can we spend Bitcoin? Can we spend our cryptocurrencies? And is it actually useful to own? Like, can this currency be useful beyond just an investment? So I haven't spent too much time in the specifics. I'm sure, Brian, you spent a lot more. So I'd be curious what your thoughts are. But to me, it's just a general, like, can it be useful?
Yeah, not too much to add. I feel the same. Yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Okay, so Marcus, I want to kind of get back to like some of the questions that we've been getting over Twitter. By the way, I have to say this room has been blowing up, and there's just such huge interest on both just each of you individually, but also just kind of like bringing you folks together. I'm kind of, Marcus, I'm kind of curious, right? You made this point about people connecting to somebody on camera, but I think you've spoken about this multiple times over videos, which is like you actually have kind of an operational team behind you. I'm kind of curious to hear more about just the operations of MKBHD Inc., just kind of the structure of the team, how you hire, how that is scaled, and how you kind of see that going forward. Because I don't think a lot of people actually realize it's just not you with a lot of fancy hardware in a really nice room, just shooting it and doing it all by yourselves.
Yeah, and I think to add to that, one thing I wanted to add to that is like Waveform, your podcast. Like, do you, have, how do you see them as like complete, like different organizations? Like, do you treat them as two different like individual entities, or is it like one team? Like, how do you work with, having both a podcast and a really active kind of YouTube set of channels and content there?
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, 100%. There's definitely a great team behind the production of what MKBHD videos are. And I think it's necessary because of the goal, which is more better. I think it's usually those two things are inversely proportional. When you go more, you usually don't go better. When you go better, you usually don't go more. So you need help. So I've been really lucky to slowly build a really great team around me. A lot of that is in the camera work, the cinematography, the production, the motion graphics. And the team continues to slowly build this year, which is super exciting. And then on the podcast, I think of the podcast just kind of like another outlet for like a different stream of consciousness type of content, because the videos have always been so structured and polished. And there's different versions of like ways to run a channel on YouTube, and we have plans for more channels. But the podcast came up because we were always like, we have all these random conversations. Like we're having conversations right now about tech. And I feel like a lot of them are really valuable, interesting conversations that people might want to add to. Why don't we record them, put them on the internet? Podcasting is a format that's been around forever, sort of fit naturally into that. So like a lot of those random hot takes where I turn around at my desk and I'm like, does anyone think anyone really cares about Tesla's panel gaps? And then there's like an hour-long conversation in the studio about it. Then yeah, that turns into an episode on the podcast and people can chime in. It's great.
So by the way, I think Samir, I want to get your take on this too, because I think one of the things I love in your recent video is how you folks have actually been doing more podcasts as a way to like generate amazing content for the channel. So I think there's kind of a connective tissue there for. I would love to kind of hear your thoughts here too.
Yeah, so just as a reference, what we were talking about was, when you record, like we recorded today, Marquez, like a long form podcast, like obviously that then can become atomized into different types of content that can be cut for, YouTube and clips. It can be released as a long form audio, long form video. And then what we do with a lot of the recordings that we have is then we'll convert them into like a video essay where we're hosting in and around it. So we try and take 1 hour long recording session and turn it into as many pieces of content as we can. But I also wanted to add, speaking of like increasing content output, we got a question on Twitter from Daniel Ebelman. He asked if you'd ever consider making a second channel for behind the scenes vlogs and generally more kind of relaxed video. Just curious if you'd be open to showing more of yourself as a person, as well as what the behind the scenes is at MKBHD HQ. So curious if that's in the works and something that we're going to get a look at.
Yeah, that's been an interesting thought. So I don't think I'll ever vlog, just because the behind the scenes, I don't know if it's like precious to me or whatever, but I just really, really value having time that is not specifically dedicated to being on camera. Much respect to vloggers. I think that's really hard. But yeah, I do think it makes a lot of sense to have, maybe it's like behind the scenes type stuff, but even more specifically, maybe just stuff around the studio that's a little more casual. That is definitely something we're thinking a lot about. And also to the point of like getting a lot of different pieces of content out of like a podcast or something like that. Like that formula is so great and it works really well. Like you guys have done it well for a bunch of episodes, and you see a lot of podcasts that do it really well. So that's literally something we're working on launching this year, trying to do it a little bit better and a little different, because it wouldn't be an MKBHD launch if we didn't. But we're trying to do a waveform podcast video channel and clips channel and all that fun stuff.
And that's something that we saw, Dobrik recently released his Views channel with his first full-length episode on YouTube this week. And we talked about Mr. Beast, Mr. Beast Burger. And so just kind of tying into what those two guys are doing in the creator economy. Just curious if there's certain creators that you look at right now and are kind of inspired to push the limit and push the boundary of what you can do with MKBHD.
Yeah, for sure. So those are two really good examples. I feel like in the beginning, a lot of my inspiration was in production, because I was still learning how to make videos. So a lot of it was like, look how great these videos are. Look at the production, look at the camera shots. That I found a lot of inspiration in that. And I think now a lot of that has turned to the business behind it, because that's again something that I'm relatively young at, which is building the business and scaling it and opening new doors for it. So that's been like the Mr. Beasts and the David Dobrik's of the world, where you kind of admire what they're able to do working with companies and what they're able to unlock and enable as far as content. Yeah, major props to both of them. I'm trying to think of another example that's not already mentioned. I'm going to go, let me think off the top. I almost want to open YouTube here. I'm going to open YouTube right now and look and see who's in my sub box that
I love it.
Right
We're
now.
doing it live.
Linus Tech Tips, Philip DeFranco. Huge shout out to those two.
I think Phil's in the audience. So
Yeah,
I just want to give a shout out to Phil DeFranco, because he's like a big inspiration for us as well. But Colin, I know you had a question that you wanted to follow up here with Marques.
Yeah, I was just curious. I think as we talk about the Phil DeFrancos of the world, the Mr. Beast, the David Dobrik's, like these are top level creators that have businesses built around them. And it's different. You have a different set of problems than if you're a small creator. You now are dealing with management and HR and hiring and all these different things. I'm curious, this is a question we asked Mr. Beast, but what's your biggest pain point as you turn from creator into full-time, have this huge business around you?
Yeah, I think that biggest pain point has like shifted over the years, actually. So early in the production world, it was just like, it takes me so long to make a video. It takes me so many hours to put together a video. I got better and better at that. And then now that we have help with making videos, I find the biggest pain point is actually the writing and research and the pre-production. And I'm going to go ahead and look into my crystal ball here and say that if we solve this pain point, the next biggest pain point is going to be like sort of in the HR world of training and like successfully transferring my creative vision to growing members of the team, like trying to figure out, because essentially my job has changed. Like now, am I a writer today? Is that my job? Am I a pro writer? I don't know. But now I'm going to have to be a pro teacher, a little bit of a ambassador for a small brand. It changes. It definitely changes.
Actually, I'm actually on the topic. I'm curious to get Brian's take, because Brian, Dave, when you came on the show, Dave, for yesterday, you spoke about your story of Coinbase and with Y Combinator and all of that. How much is your job, changed? Because one of the things I've always been curious about is like how a CEO job changes at every stage of the company. How much has your job changed at like every stage, and how do you see that evolving?
Oh yeah, it's changed so much. So, I mean, I was the first person at Coinbase, and I was just kind of writing code in nights and weekends, trying to put together a product, and there was just the only person. And then we had a couple people. We did all the customer support ourselves, anyway, it went through many layers. We now have 1,500 plus employees, and I feel like my job is kind of I'm setting things like strategy and culture and hiring board members and almost just being an external statesman at times, just meeting with people who might long-term want to partner with us in some way, right? So yeah, the job went through so many different evolutions, and I feel like that was actually kind of part of the fun of starting a company. It was like there's always something new to learn, right? You kind of have to be a mile wide, inch deep to fill in the gaps whenever you don't have somebody on the team, which you never have, especially in the early days, all the people you need. So one day I was trying to figure out how to read a financial statement, and the next day I was trying to learn how to, recruit board members or something. So it's always changing.
Okay. So I have a little bit of I guess like a spicy question for both of you, and I think Marques, I want to start with you. Look, I've spent my entire career in the tech industry, and one of the things which I would say always saddens or frustrates me is in some ways I think the tech industry which I grew up in and which I love deeply and have a lot of nostalgia around. Over the last few years, I think there's been like some strong questions where I would in some ways I would say large parts of it become unpopular. And one of the reasons I love your content is how, it kind of use another famous gadget review phrase, unapologetically enthusiastic. It is about technology in general, even if it's not about sometimes the particular products you love, some like fake plastic. So I'm just curious about you have a lot of people in the audience here who are technology leaders, CEOs here. What would you tell them about helping them recapture love from their customers, their fans, their users, where they make it hardware and software? Because I think you have an enthusiasm, you channel that somehow in a way which I'm not sure every company is able to manage.
Yeah, so you mean like if someone's lost that like connection to their audience, basically?
Pretty much, right? Because I think, like for example, when we think about as kids playing with Nintendo, there's kind of nostalgia and fondness, and it's not, a fear or, like, is this company too powerful? It's all very legitimate questions, but I think there's something about the joy and enthusiasm that you bring, which I'm not sure like a lot of companies are able to capture.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm not a pro at like making products and running product companies, but what I've found is what tends to solve everything is a great product. And no matter how weird things might get around other products or other things in the ecosystem or the connection to the audience, a great product tends to solve a lot of that. And that's what I found like with a product, like a company will have like a really bad year, like a smartphone year. They'll have a bunch of phones that flop. They'll have a bunch of things that don't really get any traction. Their market share drops. They're not having a good time. They don't have a great reputation. The next year, they make something that's just overall good. And for whatever reason, that's all it really takes for everyone to go, oh, they're back on the map. Like their product is an option again, and they seem to really care. And if the product is good, that's been the most consistent factor to me as far as connecting with an audience and things going up from there.
Brian, I'm curious to get your take. Thanks, Marques. Brian, you obviously, you run a very well-known consumer company. I'm curious to get your take on the same topic.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree. I think the product is kind of it's everything. Like if you don't have a good product, nothing else matters. Like I don't know. So it depends, especially in tech, right? Like there's some products where if you think about soft drinks, like consumer packaged goods, makeup, it feels like people are launching new stuff all the time, and it's maybe like it's kind of a commodity. Like the ingredients might be very similar or actually produced out of the exact same manufacturing plant as the other products, but it's like 90% marketing attached to those products. I've never really been very good at marketing, so I tried to make a product that was unique and differentiated just on the features or the ease of use or the trust behind it. And I also think that's kind of like the best form of marketing, when people just tell their friends like, go install this thing, go at it. They trust their friends more than they trust some ad they saw that's like telling them about it. So yeah, I think being a product-driven company is kind of the way to go. At least it worked for me. I think I wouldn't be good at it doing it another way.
So I have a question here. I mean, especially considering we have the opportunity to talk to you, Brian. But I was on Instagram today, and I was scrolling around, and I came across Logan Paul announcing that he has these like NFTs that are available. And to be honest, I just want to like take a step back and try and get an understanding of what are NFTs? How do they interact with, the creators online, social creators, and the creator economy? And as we talk about this, Marques, I'm curious if you've considered this, or what does this all mean for the creator economy?
Yeah, so I guess I'll start. So, NFT stands for non-fungible token, and this is what that means is it's a unique digital item, like a provably unique digital item, and that's kind of something that's novel because previously digital items like photos and stuff, you could just make infinite copies of them, and there was no way to sort of say this is a scarce or a unique one. So cryptocurrency allowed this to be created, and what are people using this for? Well, people started making art, kind of like limited edition art. They started trading around domain names that was kind of NFTs. Inside of games, people have digital goods. They want to have like a provably unique good inside the game. And in the future, people have always written in sci-fi about the metaverse, right? And in the metaverse, you might want to have real estate or a spaceship or clothing or whatever. And so this has kind of been, NFTs are sort of having a moment right now in crypto. And the way that this ties into creators is that, creators can now issue digital items, whether that's like, it could be a song in theory, it could be kind of like merch that is like a limited edition thing. And their fans can kind of have a direct relationship with them to own those, to buy them. What's kind of cool about it is that a lot of creators, I mean, Marques, you might know about this much better than I do, but a lot of the deals that creators do to earn money, like they either have to go through advertising if you're a musician on Spotify or whatever. They always feel like they're kind of getting pennies on the dollar. And so the potential for NFTs is exciting here in that maybe artists can have more direct connections to their fans and monetize much more effectively. And that's what everyone's starting to think about with NFTs and crypto.
Yeah, that's super interesting. Marques, have you thought about it at all? About, creating unique MKBHD art that falls into this NFT bucket?
Yeah, I was just about to say, I have not thought about this at all. And so seeing it come up, it's really interesting, and like hearing about it. Mm-hmm. I guess I could just speak about how I think about things that I don't know about, because I think we see a lot of new versions of like ways for creators to branch out, and they make a lot of sense. And this one to me makes a lot of sense. So for me, I would just want to find a way to actually do it well. Like, I'm not an artist, so I would want to find a way to make some incredible art, or to make something really cool that makes sense in this world, not just doing it just to do it because it makes sense. But I do think it makes sense, so I'm not actually shocked to see it's being done. It's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm. By the way, Marques, if you need somebody to help you with crypto, we might know a guy, and his icon is right next to you on this Clubhouse.
Yeah, noted.
Okay, so I know we're almost out of time, before we wrap up, Marques, I want to ask you one last thing. For a lot of people here, you obviously have such a wide span of hardware, and we love, the iPhones and the Teslas. Is there any piece of technology that people here may not be aware of that you feel like, hey, you may not have heard of this, but you should definitely, either go check out this gadget or check out this piece of technology that we may probably be aware of?
Oh man, I wish I had a good answer right off the top of my head for this one. It would be, there's so much good stuff. I guess I sort of assume everyone's already heard about it, but the M1 laptops of the world, like it's made by Apple. It's the biggest company in the world. You've probably heard about it already. Like, a lot of the best stuff that's out there kind of already has the spotlight on it. So a lot of times it's like this super niche stuff, like the smartphone like accessories, or like random tripods, or like the things that are made for like a super specific purpose that can really add value for certain people. They might seem crazy or dumb to other people, but yeah, I don't have any specific examples, but I'll throw out the SwitchPod as one. Like, I've used the Joby GorillaPods forever, and the SwitchPod was, if you haven't heard of it, it's like this rigid metal swiveling tripod type thing you can put a small camera or a phone on. Super useful. Most people won't care about it, but for people who've used GorillaPods, the SwitchPod is like the next best thing ever. So
I just want to vouch for it. Colin and I use the SwitchPod as well, so we're totally on board, Marques.
Same here.
I love this. Okay, I love it. Okay, and Brian, one last question for you, and I want to get back to the topic which you're just talking, which is you run a very well-known consumer company, and we had many conversations about what do tech companies do to recapture people's love. Would love to get your thoughts.
Yeah, so it's interesting for people like me. Technology is just it's so cool. Like if you think about what is our best lever to try to improve the world, improve the human experience, whether it's medicine or entertainment or education or financial services or whatever, like technology, I think is the best area to improve the world in any of those industries around the world. And so I get a little frustrated sometimes because I feel like there's a bit of tech bashing happening out there, right? And people get disillusioned, or even in Hollywood, a lot of the movies that get made, right, are kind of the Terminator variety or Black Mirror or whatever. They're all kind of dystopian about the future. But the opposite is kind of true. Like a lot of the best inventions, even like penicillin or whatever, these are all technologies, investments in STEM and science, right? So I kind of feel like we as creators have this opportunity to go create a new generation of content and media out there that is tech positive. I would love to encourage more people to go learn STEM and like try creating companies. And it's okay, like if 90% of them whatever don't work, it's a high risk thing. But if we try 1,000 ideas, that's how we get societies to drive forward with innovation and technology. That's how we get economic growth. By the way, economic growth is like the root of all of it is coming from innovation and science and technology. And so that's how you get like a bigger pie and everyone's quality of life is going up. So I wish we lived in a world of like technological progressivism that was optimistic about the future. And I think, Marques, your channel is doing that in some ways. It's getting people excited about that. I hope that a lot of the companies, the people that are starting here, probably listening in, are doing that too. And I think that's how we'll create a better world. So just wanted to give that plug.
Wow. Okay. I can't beat that. I think that's an amazing note. And Brian, thank you. I mean, in some ways, that's kind of been what I think that's exactly what Marques's last over a decade of work captures. In some tiny way, we've been trying to do that with our own little Clubhouse show here. It's time to create, and as one of our usual co-hosts would say, it's time to build. Okay, we're out of time. I want to quickly wrap up. First off, thank you to everybody who tuned in. It's kind of a huge show. All the tweets and DMs. We kind of almost at max capacity throughout. I see a lot of very well-known, famous names here in the audience. So really appreciate all of you listening as always. We will be off for a couple of days, but we're working on a surprise guest and a surprise time over the weekend. So if you're not already, just text us as 415-322-7800. The number is on my profile or on the Twitter account, and we'll keep you updated when there's a new show, or follow us on Twitter. And then I want to thank everybody. First of all, my co-host Arti, Gary, as usual, for just being amazing. Colin and Samir for just being the nicest people on YouTube. Go follow their channel. Colin and Samir, they put out amazing content about the creator economy and YouTube, and just amazing human beings. And Samir's dad, Samir, is amazing and awesome. And just make sure you tell all of your relatives also that, because that's also like quite the thing. So Colin, Samir, thank you so much for being today here with us today. Brian, again, thank you so much. Love having you on the show. Last but not least, Marques, such a delight. We loved it. Everyone on Twitter loved it. Thank you for doing what you do. Folks, go subscribe to MKBHD, and maybe you'll get to buy his rumored upcoming MKBHD phone. I'm kidding. Maybe only partially kidding. I don't know whether I'm kidding. But thank you so much. Okay, Marques, I know you're a listener. We usually try and pick a theme song that fits the guest. So for you to play us out, I want to capture something which captures the joy and spirit of technology that you have. So Marques, thank you. Gary, can you play us out to the theme from Mario?
All right.
Thank you, Marques. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, everyone. This is awesome. Thanks, Gary. All right. Good night, everyone. We're going to take a break tomorrow. We'll see you over the weekend. Thank you. This is awesome. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Be well, everyone.